They'll have to pass new laws on taxes, pensions and the liberalisation of the labour market. Simon Jones reports.
Back in Athens, the Greek Prime Minister has a deal to sell to Parliament and his people. But cracks are emerging in Alexis Tsipras's coalition, with the Deputy Foreign Minister quitting and a junior partner saying it won't back the deal agreed in Brussels. But only with pension and VAT reforms will Greek banks get an urgent injection of cash.
Taxes, 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 more taxes, taxes, taxes. So we don't have much money to pay those taxes.
I think it's better than not to have the deal. So the question could be, you want the drachma or not the drachma? And most of us, I believe, we prefer to stay in Europe.
There have been protests in Athens against more austerity, and one of Greece's largest trade unions has already called a 24-hour strike for tomorrow. But one government minister says no deal was not an option.
The banks have been closed, as you know. That was not a choice of the government, and the next step would have been an exit from the Eurozone.
But after the marathon meeting in Brussels, the negotiations in Athens to get the deal through are continuing. Simon Jones, BBC News.
So what went on behind the closed doors of the negotiations in Brussels? Certainly very tense it was, the talks fraught with bickering and mistrust. And Ben Bland has been investigating.
It took 17 hours of talks to reach a deal. The sticking point was a demand by the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. She wanted 50 billion euros of Greek state assets put into a fund in Luxembourg to pay off creditors and rescue Greek banks. The Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras was reportedly close to walking out. He said if he agreed to one more condition, he feared Greeks would brand him a sellout. The European Council President Donald Tusk, chairing the summit, said he would not let Tsipras and Merkel out of his office until they agreed. Christine Lagarde and Mario Draghi twice intervened to remind Tsipras that their institutions, the IMF and the European Central Bank, were financing his budget and Greece's banks. Sources said they were extremely close to the worst-case scenario at 6 a.m. But eventually a compromise emerged on the privatisation fund. Officials said it was a great relief. But it was a summit marked by mistrust and bickering, magnified by the fatigue. Just to begin negotiations on a bailout of up to 86 billion euros, but only if the Greek Parliament approves the deal by Wednesday. Ben Bland, BBC News.
And let's talk to you about Greece. Of course, you've been hearing Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has returned home after the weekend's marathon negotiations over a third bailout package for his indebted nation. But those talks may seem easy compared to the battle he is now facing, convincing his country this deal is good. Many Greeks feel the conditions for the deal were too harsh. Let's speak to Tanya Beckett, who is in Athens for us. So pressure back on Alexis Tsipras now, Tanya. He has got to get his government on board and opposition politicians as well.
Yes, our understanding thus far, and of course you're referring to the vote that he now has to get through Parliament, pushing all of these reforms which have been stipulated by the creditors. We understand that the opposition parties are on board for this. The problem he's going to have is more within his own party, because of his own party was against austerity and was voted into government on the mandate of doing precisely what it is now about to do. This morning, the mood in Greece seems a little bit moving towards acceptance. There is still anger that the notion of this is the birthplace of democracy, of course, but the very notion of democracy appears to be leaving the country. They appear to be told what to do as far as they're concerned, the Greeks, by other countries, but they see an opportunity there of leaving its rather dysfunctional economic history behind it. I'll just quickly show you, if I may, what's happening in the newspapers. This is a statue of Alexander the Great, the great conqueror, of course, with a bloody nose. That's more one of the sort of tabloid newspapers. Here, the word on this newspaper is vertigo, and you can see a picture of Alexis Tsipras and the type of stress that he's going to be going through right now. And this is a more conservative newspaper here, which says it is time for Greece to take responsibility. And this is a little bit the conclusion that many people appear to be now coming to, that perhaps it's time to move on. As one person once said to me during the financial crisis that started in 2008, 2009, don't waste a crisis. So this could provide an opportunity.
And in terms of moving on, of course, banks being open, being able to get cash out of your account, that kind of normality needs to return at some point. Where are we with that?
Well, that's a good question. Of course, we've mentioned the vote. The other two things that need to be arranged fairly hastily are for the banks to reopen, and we understand that that is not going to happen before the end of Wednesday. Greeks anticipated that there would be some sort of cash crunch and had set aside for that. I went out to do a bit of shopping yesterday afternoon, wandered around the shops and was watching a bit of consumer behaviour and saw that people still apparently were using cards in shops and still had some access to cash. So right now it is not an immediate crisis, but it's certainly a very large inconvenience. The other problem is that Greece needs money now. It can't wait to negotiate this bailout, which still needs negotiation. So what it's going to have to do is have bridge financing in order to meet its debt obligations in July and August, most notably on the 20th of July as well, and it has to pay back the European Central Bank. So there are some fairly urgent things that need to be done. It's going to be a very rocky path, and once they're through that and the summer, which of course the Greeks are very attached to, you get to September and you have an unstable government. This is not going to be an easy path to reform.
All right, thank you so much, Tanya Beckett, who is in Athens for us. Don't forget as well, you can stay right across all the latest developments by using our website, bbc.com/news. We've got a brand new app you can download. It doesn't matter what device you've got. If it's an Apple or an Android device, you can take part. Create your own news feed, select the topics that are most important to you, and use the new BBC News app. It is available right now. Just go to your app store to download it.
It's, sorry, 21:07, just remind us.
The Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has once again been involved in overnight talks, this time to get his own government to agree to some unpopular austerity measures.
Well, one member of his cabinet's already resigned. Strikes have been called in protest against tax rises and pension cuts that are conditions of the latest Eurozone bailout.
Michael Argyru, a Greek economist at Cardiff University, joins us now from Athens. Morning to you. Thank